Welcome. I am Magnus Edholm, and with me today I have Jason Hiner, the editor-in-chief of the Veep View. You're basically writing a lot about AI. Before we start digging into that, though,
Yeah.
Jason, give us the background. I mean, I'm reading here. You've been doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So I've covered technology for the past couple decades, especially focused on enterprise tech. So, especially focused on business decision makers, professionals. I've worked for multiple publications. Up until recently, I worked for ZDNet. So, I was the editor in chief of ZDNet for the past 4 years and uh, really focusing on AI, especially the last 3 years at ZDNet. But I've been covering AI for over a decade. And then now I've just recently started at the Deep View, where I focus on AI exclusively. So I went to the Deep View to cover AI every day because there's so much happening. It's such a paradigm shift as Siemens talks about a lot, as well.
Right.
And so now I get to cover it every day and also build a next generation media company for the ways we can connect with audiences in the future because it looks a lot different than it looked, even 5 years ago. The ways that we connect with audiences it is so much more sophisticated and interesting. And so I'm working on building a media company focused on that.
Okay. So I know we spoke before that we went on live that you began talking AI back in 2013.
Yeah.
I gotta
Yeah.
tell you, I didn't even know there was a thing called AI back in then.
Yeah. I know, right? So in 2013, we talked about it in terms of AI, deep learning, automation, especially in the enterprise. And so we did a special feature, what we called it at ZDNet at the time, that brought people together, writers together from across the globe, from Asia, from Europe, from North America. And we wrote about the ways businesses were using automation and machine learning and these things to bring efficiencies, to drive efficiencies, and to really unlock innovation, unlock data, all of those kinds of things. Now, that was the seed or the germ of the AI that we're in now, which is so much more capable.
Right. So if you go back to 2013, we
Yeah,
make a journey back in time,
yeah.
and then cut to 13 years later. What has been like? Give it the three biggest differences from back then. I mean, you had the mindset, obviously technology, but what you said, those are the key things that you would like to talk about.
Yeah, so, with generative AI, so much more has been unlocked, right, over the last 3 years. The AIs are much more capable of operating independently is one way to think about it. That's where sort of the number 2 comes in, which is AI agents. This outgrowth of generative AI, which is AI that can now, create things, create scenarios, create content, create all kinds of things. Now there's AI agents where not only that can the AI can operate, more independently. Well, that's a whole nother, realm of
Right.
possibilities. And then the third is really this concept that Siemens knows well and is at the forefront of, which is industrial AI and enterprise AI, where we're still seeing consumers just starting to get a taste of generative AI and this new AI boom, but businesses are full on speeding down the tracks, right? They want to take these new solutions, AI, generative AI, and AI agents to solve business problems in ways that weren't possible. And I loved how Siemens CEO, Roland, put this in context this week,
Hmm.
which was talking about that when we built software, even the software defined enterprise, we had to define a lot of things for the software, right? And now the software is much more flexible. It can fill in a lot of gaps, and that unlocks a lot more value.
Oh yeah, totally. And I mean, what you're talking about there is also what I kind of burn for. I mean, you have the software-defined automation, which is required to build software-defined products,
Yeah.
and you have, in our case, a very comprehensive digital twin, which has so many different facets. If you're a product designer, or you're a simulation expert, or a manufacturing planner, and then you have the digital twin, all those three coming together. So there's surely a lot of things happening in there. A lot of terms that perhaps not everybody is aware of.
Sure.
But since you've been around for such a long time and you've been in this game, if someone want to start working with industrial AI, which is somewhat different than the AI that you would use when you are looking for a recipe or using it as a search engine. I mean, there's kind of a lot of big differences in there. What would you say is the best way to get up to speed as a industrial company based on
Yeah.
your experience? I mean, you've probably seen a lot of companies.
For sure. So, this is one of the things that the generative AI movement boom has unlocked as well is that companies are now telling their stories a lot more, right? You can use generative AI to take a PowerPoint or a set of bullets and all that, and it can help you create content. So companies, like Siemens, like AWS, like others, are putting out a lot more, white papers. They're putting out a lot more content on how do you use these things in specific industries? How do you take not just large language models, which power generative AI, but how do you do small language models? Siemens has very number of very specific small language models for specific industries, for specific use cases. So finding the if you're going to get started on this, I'd say, look into some of those white papers and some of those case studies
Hmm.
on what's it looking like in your industry, in your, whether it's manufacturing or sciences or, any of these things. There is so much out there, even just in the last 2 years. I've seen so much more good content created around those case studies and really those scenarios and specific domain specific,
Yeah.
language models.
Yeah. And also, now we are at the CES, and it shouldn't be a secret to anyone. There's a lot of announcements going on. What do you see AI taking us in, say, the next 12 years? And when we get back here next year, perhaps we have a sit down.
Yes.
What do you think is going to happen in next year, and then perhaps also 1 year in that? I believe personally, we're moving so fast.
Yes.
So we'd be curious to find out if you have an answer to that and how you manage to stay ahead of the pack.
Well, I think that the biggest thing now, like I said, companies are starting to use these things. That this new AI boom, companies are starting to try these things. They're implementing proof of concept projects. But what they found, one of the unfiltered truths about AI
Mhm.
is that it's very expensive and it's hard to get to ROI. So what I've seen is a lot of these companies really gearing down on, okay, now that we've learned how to use this, how can we make it less expensive?
Right.
How can we run these models in ways, maybe use a smaller model, use a more domain specific model, use older hardware or use, less powerful hardware in order to save money and even in some cases increase performance and make really get to ROI. So I think you're going to see in 26 and 27 especially now a lot of these proof of concept projects are going to move to, okay, now we've learned how to do these and maybe we trained it on one of the big, general models. Now we're going to try to find the specific models that will let us do this in a more profitable way, a more efficient way, and in some cases, with better performance and better options, better knowledge and data sets too.
Yeah. And it's almost like one is forgetting that there are actually other technologies out there than just
True.
AI. And I swear to God, you have an eye on that as well, don't you? You look.
Yeah, of course.
Is there anything that kind of stands out in particular from your point of view?
There are some that intersect AI, but are maybe related, but a little bit on the edges. And so I think one of them is, and I'm wearing a pair right now,
I
smart
can see that. Yeah,
glasses.
yeah.
So smart glasses. What does it look like when you have an LLM sort of at your beck and call? Right on your face, right when where it can help look at the world and evaluate, where it can bring the opportunity to ask questions of what you're seeing and multimodal or what you're hearing. So I think that's one of the big questions this year is like, are consumers gonna really be into this idea of can we bring AI, more into our everyday life? And we'll see. Does AI glasses become something that more people want to be, using? The other is, and it's not a secret, and we've seen it for years, and it's been promised for years. But really, self-driving cars and autonomous is becoming. It's really the rubber meets the road, no pun intended, has started to meet road. In the US, you see Waymo increasing to a lot more places, and in Europe and Asia, you also see more of them being deployed. Tesla and Waymo are doing a lot more, in the US and have plans to roll it out to a lot more cities. I think that's where consumers are going to start to interact with AI in more everyday ways. They're not even going to think about it as AI. Like this is just a way to do something in a more efficient way and probably a less expensive way as well. And that's what will likely unlock some of that value. Although some people also see it for safety and for other reasons, too.
Yeah.
So that's going to be really interesting. We've heard the promise for a long time, but I think it gets a lot more real this
You
year.
know what? I think that with driving is a really, really interesting because I think that in a not too distant future, perhaps people are going to ask, like, why on earth did we let people drive themselves?
Right.
I mean, now you have
Right.
everything under control, and some of the cars that are out there. I mean, you keep track of the people, the cars around you, so it is probably also bringing a lot more safety to the game. Uh,
True.
and I mean, that's one thing to have the smart product, etc. But there's also infrastructure where
Yeah.
AI can be used.
Yes.
Agentic AI, we talked about that. Which one of generative, agentic, and infrastructure AI do you think has the biggest growth potential?
Yeah. Agentic has to, I think,
Yeah.
because no, we're still at the very beginning. Like it's very, very nascent. Um, But once agentic starts to get use cases where you can say, I can do this, I can give it my goals, my parameters, the outcomes that I want, and I can start applying it to that and let it, do things on my behalf. That's going to be really addicting, I think, for a lot of companies. It was interesting. One of the things that Siemens, that Roland, CEO from Siemens, talked about was that that's going to help a number of companies that they work with in manufacturing. They have a real challenge with staffing. They can't find enough people to staff all of the opportunities that they have, and so they're going to use agentic AI to help fill some of the gaps, to help some of the workers that they have work on higher level things and be able to have some assistance that
Right.
that can do some of the stuff that's more automated, right, that they can automate and give them better jobs, essentially let them do higher level, more important, more valuable work that only a human can do.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a global challenge, and we know that those are the things that the companies are struggling with today. So I think agentic AI will probably, when it comes to that point, it will be something supportive to the industries. And I think it's crucial that we actually have that stuff. And if anyone's out there listening to what we're talking about, how would you, or what would you say to them? What they should listen to? Is it a podcast? What should they read? How can they keep up to speed to be on? I mean, you are moving fast.
Yeah.
Talked about you've been around for a couple of decades doing this. What would you be like? This is what you need to do. Study up on that.
Yeah.
This.
It moves very fast and it's very challenging to keep up. We live in an era of abundant information and there's a lot of conflicting signals, right? There's a lot of information, there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of information where you see one source say this and another source say that, right? So I'm going to, this is a little selfish, of course, but I'm going to say the Deep View, we have a newsletter that goes out every day.
Yeah.
We talk about the top 3 stories that you need to know in AI. This is really aimed especially at professionals and people working, to put AI to work.
Hmm.
But we do that every day, and our view is that there's an audience that's getting a lot of conflicting signals. They're getting a lot of information overload, and so we try to boil it down to like, here's the stuff that you need to know for today. The most important stories, the stuff that
Yeah.
you don't want to miss, you don't want to ignore. So we do that. We also have a podcast called the Deep View Conversations, where we
Deep view conversation.
yes, where we bring on experts in the field and talk to them about the things that they're working on, the insights that they have and that they're learning. And so we try to share that learning, disseminate that learning, in the world with all of the smartest people who are learning a lot of really important and really great insights about AI.
I'm gonna make sure that when I get on my plane home, I'm gonna download and gonna listen to that podcast.
I love it.
Jason, it has been really good to have you here.
Thank
It's
you.
also impressive that you've been working on this topic for such a long time, and I feel we could talk much more about this.
Yeah.
And also for those of you out there, make sure that you perhaps follow you on the social media and
Find
sign
me
up
there
for
too.
the newsletter and listen to the podcast. Because at the end of the day, it's all about learning, and we gotta be part of the gig. AI is not something that's coming, as we just learned. It's something that's here. It's industrial AI with all the different types of variants that you have, and it's going to be a huge support for the industry as we move forward.
True. Very good. I should have said subscribe.thedeepview.com is where you can get a hold of the newsletter.
Eatside.com, go there and subscribe and listen
Very
to
good.
Jason. Jason, Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Wish
Thanks
you
for having me
being
on.
here at the fair, and hope to see you around, perhaps
Likewise.
in 13 years. Before then,
Let's do it before 13 years.
before, yeah, yeah, might be retired by then.